What's up? I'm Drew Paul Bell, and today what I want to talk about is share a story about kind of an experience that I had one time applying for a building permit that I think would be helpful for anybody who's about to be like an intern or whatever. So we had this project where it was going to be it was a high school. So we had a high school, a small private high school here in Atlanta, and or really over in like Decatur, and they already had a small facility, and then they bought like a small building across the street, and so they were going to renovate this building. And we did a design for them where we knocked down all the interior walls of this building. It used to be like a small office industrial building, and we made two classrooms, and then there was a back building as well that we turned into like an art room, this outdoor canopy space. It was really nice. So, but we had to fast track this project essentially. So it was kind of a design build relationship with the contractors that we ended up hiring, that we worked with, and because this had to be fast-tracked, we wanted to go ahead and get up to the city and to the county and talk about what we needed to get approved and make sure that everything was kind of squared away before we started down the process of designing this building. So we had kind of like I had kind of a pre-meeting with people at the city and people at the county. At the county, there was this one person in particular who I think she was in charge of like fats, oils, and grease, or backflow preventers and sewer type stuff. And I remember going into this meeting, right, and I had on my set, we'd already done like a lot of the drawings, and she was like right off the bat, almost like on the attack, and it was funny because like I was a little surprised by it. I mean, I've always like kind of expected to get a hard time from people at the department at the city or the county, but this woman, she was like on it, and I remember like the way that I did it though is I held my ground. And I just kept asking questions. I was like, why do you say, she was trying to say that like, we were gonna have to install a grease trap. Okay, and I've worked in the office, we had like a restaurant, and I know that like installing a grease trap is a problem. Like, grease traps cost a lot of money, you have to dig a big hole, you have to bury it down there, you gotta have all kinds of connections and stuff. It's a huge hassle. I know people who have, we had somebody who has like a restaurant, and he was trying to like redo the whole thing so that he wouldn't redo his whole business model so that he wouldn't have to install a grease trap. And so I knew this was a problem, and I didn't want to have to do this. And so I kept asking her questions like, why do we need a grease trap? And she was like, because this is this. And I was like, what eventually came out though was that there was this high school. She assumed, because this was a high school, that we were gonna have a cafeteria that all these kids were gonna be eating, and that all this stuff grease was going to go down into the pipes, and it would clog up all the lines and cause problems for the whole street. Okay, but she misunderstood that this was a renovation project, and that they have their cafeteria on the other property, the one across the street. So they're not going to be here to eat. They're only coming here for like the two classes and then the art class. So there was just that level of misunderstanding. Okay, and I feel like with these projects, like if you're the one working on it, there's a lot of things that you know about it that like to you it makes sense. To you it's obvious because of course that's the way it is. That's the situation. But when you're walking into a building department or a planning department where they have another project every couple minutes, they're looking at some new thing and they're jumping around from this project to that project. They don't know every little thing about your project. You know things that you know it better than they do, and you have to be able to figure out sometimes. I feel like there's oftentimes I've gone in and people have always kind of misunderstood something, and you got to understand why. Because I mean, like they're looking at this thing completely out of context, looking at it for the first time ever. They might not. I've had other experiences where like people didn't even realize I was doing we were doing like a small renovation, really just adding like a wall or two in one of our neighbors at the in our office condos, one of the neighbors' offices. And not a big deal, but we had to get the permit, and like they were like misunderstanding that like this was like one unit in an office building, not a whole office building. We don't need a site plan, you know? Like they would think, oh, but you have to have a site plan, you have to have surveys. Like this is all we're doing is building like two walls, right? So they might be coming at you on the offensive, but you have to be able to keep your calm, hold your ground, communicate. You have to also have like an awareness around what should be necessary and what's really expected, and to ask them these kinds of questions. What you also shouldn't do is necessarily be like, oh, well, I'm just gonna go back to the office now and say that we have to get a survey to do this office condo to put up two walls next door, because that doesn't make any sense either. right? You have to be able to stand your ground and not challenge them, but like earn their respect, okay? And ask them questions and figure out really why you need some of these things that they're telling you you need that you don't think you need. Yeah, that be able to have those communications, a lot of time, those conversations, and a lot of times those misunderstandings actually come out. And then the other thing is like ask questions, like really have the talk, right? Talk, because sometimes those misconceptions are there and you don't even realize it. And I have found that for me, that one situation with like she thought that we needed a grease trap was one of the times where somebody was like the most kind of on the offense at me, and after standing my ground and having those conversations with her, and then the subsequent points that she brought up, which is that you need to do this, and this, and I have to ask qualifying questions to make sure I understood what she was talking about and say, okay, so you're telling me that we need to have calculations for the number of students that are going to be in this. How many students are there going to be? I'm like there's going to be increase. She thought that there was going to be an increase in students, but this was a high school, and I didn't communicate that well enough. I said this is a school. I didn't say it was a high school, right? So it wasn't that this was an elementary school where we're going to have a fixed number of kids in each class all day long. This is we have a high school that's already overcrowded, and we're going to give them a couple of extra rooms to then spread out. They're not adding more students because of this. The number of students is going to remain the same, right? So we had to have that discussion too. And then, because she was worried about how, if we have more students here, that's going to be more sewage going into the sewer system. We can't overflow the sewer system because then that's going to backflow and have all kinds of problems that we don't want to have, right? But again, having that conversation. After standing my ground on situations like that, on a couple different points, eventually I won her over, and she was cool with me. I basically, in a way, I kind of earned her respect, I think. And it was like, then after that, like the conversation totally changed. And then it wasn't about like her being on the offense and trying to find out what I needed to do and why this was wrong and why I needed to go back to that. It was like, she was kind of like, oh, okay, well, I understand now, cool, well, here's what you need to do. And then she even became super helpful, and she was like, listen, here's the thing, and it's like this, and here's where you need to go, and you know what, let me just go ahead and print it out for you. Here you go, just fill out this form, and I'm gonna circle this thing here that you need to do this. And like, that's a totally different conversation than, yeah, you need to go find that one form, it's online, come back and apply it again, and then you come back and then you find out that like that was only half the answer that you needed, right? Which happens sometimes, you know? So after kind of standing your ground and not getting offensive back, asking the questions and having the conversation, figuring out the misconceptions, earning the respect, and then that can go a long way towards making the whole like dealing with municipalities project go a lot more smoothly. But the other thing that I need to mention, it comes before all of that, and that requires that you actually do your homework in the first place, right? Because the preparation is really what matters the most. Those kinds of like, I don't want to call them arguments because they're not really arguments, but those kinds of like, those little battles, I guess, about like you getting your project through the permitting process or whatever, that doesn't start when you walk in and sit down. That doesn't start when you take a number at the intake desk. That starts like weeks before when you're doing the drawings. It requires that you know that you need to have the cover page, and knowing what information you have to have on the cover page, and knowing that it follows the code, and being as aware as you can be about the whole process. You got to go look up online what the process is for getting the building permit, calling ahead and sometimes talking to, say, in this particular situation, the fact that I was even talking to anybody at the county was a surprise to me, because we thought that we were just going to go to the city, and the city said, well, with water and water runoff and all this stuff, because of things that have been happening lately, they passed a new rule. We have to communicate with the county on this as well, right? So even knowing what you have to do beforehand, having conversations sometimes even beforehand, but it's that homework, it's that preparation that helps you to actually succeed in getting your projects through the building permits. And as an intern, this can be a little daunting because like you're obviously kind of new, and sometimes you can be a little intimidated, and sometimes it's hard to even find like the respect from people right off the bat. But if you follow these pieces of advice, then I think this will really help you do this if this is something that you're gonna have to be doing. So I hope this helps. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you next time.